And today we have Bill Squatner from the Bear County Master Gardeners. And I was just talking to Bill that, it's been, I've known Bill 4 or 5 years. We've been to 3 or 4 different classes together. But when I was doing his bio, I said it was interesting because we both completed our Master Gardener training in 2017. And then in 2019, we both got the Master Gardener of the Year award. His was at the state level, mine was at the county. So I said, now I know who I was competing. So again, I'd like to welcome Bill. He's going to be doing soils today. We are videotaping, okay? So keep that in mind, shooting across. And without further ado, please welcome Bill Squatner.
Let me make sure the microphone's still working. The microphone's still on?
All.
Is the microphone still working? I think it's still on. Now is it on? It says it's on. It says it's on when it checks out. I would like to know if it's on again. It's on now, right?
Yeah.
It's on now. Okay. That's a microphone. All right, good afternoon. Thank y'all for being here. How many master gardeners do we have here? Just kind of curious. All right, so we have some non-master gardeners. Master Gardeners is an association, and we are sponsored by Texas A&M University College Station. Our land grant college for the state of Texas. Land grant college came about in the 1860s because the United States was having an industrial revolution, and we needed young men and women eventually to study specifically science, agriculture, and mechanics. A lot of the land grant colleges simply put the name state on their name, so you don't know the land grant colleges. Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Kansas State. Some of them kept private names. Purdue is a land grant college, Cornell's a land grant college. But Texas A&M, the unique thing they did was they kept their mission in their name. They're not Texas State, they're Texas Agriculture and Mechanical. And they sponsor us, they provide our training, and we've got our certification every year through them. So, we're talking about soil basics today. There's 2 things. I've been doing the presentation about 5 or 6 years now. I just start off with this slide right here. There's 2 things that we cannot change, practically speaking. That is our soil's texture and our soil's pH. I'll explain what that means in a minute. But the soil we have is just the way it is. It's been this way for millions of years, and you're not going to change it, and I'll show you why. Alright, so this is some of the soils. I have Bear County, the surrounding area, because it's a fascinating geological area to study for soils. From left to right, that red sandy clay soil you'll find down in the Somerset area and in park areas here. The soil in the middle is called Houston Black. It's also called Houston Gumbo. That goes right to the middle of San Antonio, which is why they have such horrible conditions for foundations. And I'll explain to you that why. On your right is an Edwards Plateau soil, which is, if you go 1604 out Bandera Road, up 41, it's that. But some of that soil has worked its way here, and I'll tell you why. And then the bottom one is beach sand. Down where San Diego's Olive Orchard used to be, that is beach sand straight out of Myrtle Beach, because George Strait was close when he said oceanfront property in Arizona. Well, this one was oceanfront property right here in South Texas. He had the right idea, wrong state. So all the 4 of those are going to find their way in the soils in this area as a whole. The components of soil, you have really 2 main things. You have pores and without pores. So the pore space is where you have water and you have air. The other part of soil is going to be mineral and organic material. Air is needed because the soil, the roots need to be able to breathe. They need to have air flowing through the soil. The roots have to have water. And one of the problems we face here with our soil is compaction, because we walk on our soil. Our dogs run on the soil. People park their trucks on soil. The rain falling from 30,000 feet up in the air hits the ground. It compacts soil. With a compact soil, it takes away airspace. The roots can't breathe like they need to. It takes away pore space for water. The plants don't get the nutrients they need. Another part of it is organic material. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then the mineral. Mineral is the parent material. That mineral is why you can't change our soil's texture. There's a difference between texture and structure, and I'll cover that with you. If I don't cover it with you, I'm sure you'll let me know. Parent material. It's the material, it's the mineral that was dissolved that formed our soil. And if you have granite and sandstone, and some of this area down here is going to be sandstone, because this used to be out in the ocean. You can sit on South Bend County, put your pole out in the water, catch yourself a nice tuna, flowing through Seguin. Shale, slate, and fine-grained rocks break down and give us silt. We don't have a whole lot of silt around here. And then limestone, chalk, marl, dolomite, those give us the clay soils that we have, which are a significant issue for us if we can't treat them right. So the mineral material, the parent material is weather. What I mean by weather is cold temperatures. I don't know if y'all been watching the weather lately. They say it's going to get a little chilly on Monday. The wind chill factor may be somewhere in single digits. If y'all thought we lived in Minnesota or something. But that cold temperature, when it hits those rocks, it can cause the rocks to crack. When they crack, they break down into either silt, sand, or clay, depending. Is it granite? Is it sandstone? Is it shale? What is the parent materials? How it breaks down gives us the texture of our soil. The high temperature, same thing. We had, about 3 years of 100-degree temperatures this past summer. And everything we thought was growing, because last spring was nice, died during the summer. Trees lost all their leaves, they lost all their acorns. The squirrels tearing up yards trying to find them. The trees are suffering, and then when the heat hits those rocks, the rocks crack. They break down into either sandstone or clay. Gravity. When rocks fall, when they hit the ground, they burst into little pieces. They're going to break into sandstone or clay. Rain. When the rain falls from 30,000 feet hits limestone, that rain is acidic. It's going to dissolve that limestone into particles of clay. When it hits granite, it's going to break it into particles of sand. And then nature. I took this picture out on the Leon Creek Greenway. It's just south of 1604. You can't really tell that well. There's a tree growing in that rock. As that tree grows in that rock, the roots are going to start to break that rock into pieces. And then you have rain hitting that rock, you have cold weather hitting that rock, you have hot weather hitting that rock, and it's going to break that rock into finer pieces. What's it going to break it down to? If it's limestone, it's going to break it down into clay. That's the way limestone works. If that was a piece of granite, it would break it down into sand. That's the way sand works. So the parent material determines the type of soil that we're going to have. You can't change that. And I'll show you some pictures on why. So soil texture is sand, silt, clay. Basically, that's what it is. Depending on how much sand or how much silt or how much clay you have, you get to find yourself in this little chart here. There's a real scientific way of finding that out. And off the top of my head, I can't remember how it is. But you can see how much clay. Let me go on the side over here. This is all clay. Clay, silty clay, loam, sandy clay. All that is clay. And not all clay minerals are created equal. The reason San Antonio, going to the middle, has such an issue with clay is a special kind of clay. It's called smectite clay. I used to call mountain morillonite clay, but smectite clay. The way smectite is designed is when it gets wet, it swells up. All clay does. But when smectite clay dries, it shrinks tremendously. Which is why my mother, because I grew up with that clay soil, she'd have the house leveled, found all the doors worked, and 3 weeks later the house was not level anymore. Well, it dried up. And when it dried up, it moved those pier beams, because that's the kind of house we had. It creates havoc. We're trying to create roads. They just put that road in. How come it's cracked? Because the clay soil underneath it expanded because we had 15 inches of rain one weekend. We only get about 32 inches of rain a year, and we usually get it on 2 weekends. Last time it's just dry as can be. And so they lay that soil, they lay that base out there. It's nice and wet. They build the road. And so the weather gets turned off. It's 100 degrees, and this clay soil shivers, and the roads create problems. They start to crack. So not all clay soil, not all clay is created equal. So clay, we talked about the texture, sand, silt, clay. Now we're talking about the structure. How does soil function? Sand drains. That's the purpose of sand. That's just the nature of sand. What we try to teach or preach, whatever, in our horticulture classes is what's called earth-kind practices. Earth-kind, the term, the story I heard was designed by Dr. Steve George. When I studied horticulture, there are some heroes in my life in Texas horticulture. One of them is Dr. Jerry Parsons from San Antonio, Dr. Steve George, Dr. Baron Rector, these guys, Dr. Sam Conner, these guys are just brilliant. And I forgot where I'm going with that. Anyway, so the soil structure is the way the soil or sand absorbs water or drains water. By nature, sand is going to want to drain water. What we can do is we can change the way soil functions. And the way soil functions is by stopping sand from draining water so quickly. And we do that by adding organic material, which is compost. And I'll talk more about why in a minute. So we have these sandy soils. We can add compost to them so that we can change the way the soil functions. It's still going to be primarily draining, but we can slow down the draining because what the compost does is it makes the sand kind of clump together and it becomes a little bit more absorbent. When you look at things like silt, silt plays kind of two things. It drains, but it also maintains water. And so compost will help silt be more efficient with the way it drains and maintains water. And I remember how come I chased that around now. Earth-kind practices. Dr. Steve George, years ago, when after World War II, people moved down here from all over the country because it's where the jobs were. When they were military, we had Fort Sam, Brooks, Cali, Lackland, Davina, Annex, and people moved down here. When they moved down here, they wanted to recreate California, Oregon, New York, and Florida, because that's what they were from. My folks are from Indiana. They tried to recreate Indiana. This ain't Indiana. And so we were using a lot of water, we're using a lot of chemicals to try to force plants to grow here that did not by nature want to grow here. So there's a movement to how can we find plants that grow here in our conditions. So rather than force a tree to grow here that doesn't want to, what trees do grow here? And so they're looking for a way to describe this approach to gardening, and Dr. George's wife said, let's call it earth-kind. So if you have alkaline soil, or you have this clay soil, some people say, well, I'll just add sand to it. Well, sand and clay is not going to make it work, but the idea is earth-kind, you don't get in 5 dump trucks full of sand for your 30 by 30 foot lawn to change the texture of the soil. That's not earth-kind. If you have acidic soil, you don't bring in 5 dump trucks full of limestone because that's not earth-kind. The idea of earth-kind is what grows here and how can we nurture that. And there's a great story in Texas, horticulture history, called the Rose Rustlers. If you haven't heard about them, look them up online. Fascinating group of people. They're people like us. I'll put it in our setting. We're going to meet at Texas Lutheran on any given Saturday. You're going to bring your pruning shears, and we're going to bring some rooting hormone. We're going to bring some soil. We're going to drive down Highway 90 from here to Katy. And every time we see a rose bush, we're going to take a cutting of that rose bush. With permission, of course. Because the idea is that rose bush has been grown by that dilapidated farmhouse, it's going to grow at their house. And so they would take cuttings, and they would propagate those plants, and they would name it for the location. But the thing is, those plants grew here. So why are we importing roses that take chemicals and concern, or we're worried about it, and these roses grow naturally? And one of the plants they came across was the Henry Dewberg salvia. Henry Dewberg salvia is found at the grave site of Henry Dewberg. And Dr. Jerry Parsons would say, if a dead guy can grow that plant, certainly you can. So rather than bringing in plants that will grow here, just plant more Henry Dewberg salvia. Sorry, that's how I got off on that. What organic material does is it affects the way the soil functions. So sand becomes more absorbent. Clay, which is very clumpy, organic material gets in there and it breaks it up. I'll talk more about organic material in a little bit. Soil pH. You cannot change our soil pH for all practical purposes. I know you may want to grow azaleas, and you can grow azaleas. They're going to look pathetic because they like acidic soil. They like acidic water. They're alkaline. It's just the nature. And I'll show you a slide of what you're up against. A lot of the was acidic or alkaline in part is due to the parent material. Granite tends to be more found in acidic soils. There's a reason why. Limestone tends to be found in more clay soils. And I'll show you a map of why that is. The soil pH is also determined by how dry or wet it is. Drier places tend to be more alkaline. Wetter places tend to be more acidic. Now I know you're asking yourself, well, why is that? I don't understand how that could happen. Because all that moisture hits the soil and it leaches out hydrogen ions, and you're left with hydroxide ions that tend to be alkaline. That's what the pH stands for, the potential of hydrogen. And the potential hydrogen chart, if you ever look at one, 7 is neutral, anything above 7 is alkaline, anything below 7 is acidic. Some places and around here, you may hit 8 or 9. San Antonio is definitely 7 and 8. I mean, 8 and 9. It's very, very alkaline. The farther east you go, it tends to be more acidic because their parent material is different. Also, because it's wetter. The more moisture leaches out some of the ions, and you're left with acidic soil. So, what does all that mean? It means that you have your 30 by 30 foot area, you have your 1 acre, and you want to change your soil texture, and you want to change your soil pH. And here's a map that shows you what you're up against. All that blue and gray is by nature limestone, which is going to be clay, and it's going to be alkaline because it's dry. By nature, that's what you're up against. So you look at that state, that map of the United States, and you pick out your little 30 by 30 foot lot, and you're going to say, in this entire area, I'm going to change my soil. But everybody else soil around you hasn't changed at all. Their soil is going to change your soil, so you're going to be changing this thing every month. If you look, where are the driest places? Right up the center. Where are the deserts? Right up the center. That's going to be alkaline soil. Alkaline soil, higher pH. It's going to be clay soil. Where does all the rainfall take place? It takes place in the eastern United States. It's wetter. It leaches out some of those ions that alkaline soil has. That's just the nature of things. We can't, that's why I said the very first slide, we cannot change the texture of our soil. If you have clay, learn to deal with clay. You have sand, learn to deal with sand. We have a high pH, and we have very alkaline water, high pH water, and that's just the nature of things. So people will buy their acid level plants, they'll put them in a container, and where do they get their water from? They get their water from the ground. What's their water? The water is going to be a high pH. So you put your special container and you kill it with water. So you get away. This map is a precipitation. You can see the lighter colors, which goes to Texas. We tend to be on the drier side. What's all the green? It's to the east. So it's another. You can't change the weather pattern. And we're getting drier. And we're getting hotter. That means we have less water available, which means you're at the challenge for even more for those who want to kind of change just the basic nature of their soil. And this is the state of Texas. It's hard to read except you can see the colors, which are pretty. We are right around the yellow, and green. We get around 32 inches average a year. And I don't have it in this presentation, but we have been average and above average twice in the last 10 or 12 years. If we average 32 inches of rain a year, we got, what, 7 or 9 inches a couple of years back? How much do we have to get to average out to 32? That's the idea of earth-kind plants. If you've got plants that require a lot of water, then you're taking a lot more water to water a plant as opposed to water to drink. If y'all remember a while back we had that gasoline shortage where people got a little snippy with each other at the gas station? That's to buy gas, and that's what happens when it comes down to water. So the idea is how much conservation can we practice? One is to grow plants that grow here. But the second thing is to amend our soil. And that goes through compost. This picture simply is to show the really deep red in there is around this area. That's that cement type clay. Shrink soil capacity is really, really bad. So that's why you get cracks in your wet yard sometimes, because that clay soil has just dried out in the upper levels. And it's just broken up. This slide is a slide of soil horizon. This is an illustration of soil horizon. I got this out of my compost pile this morning. At the bottom, I'm going to pass this around. This is not Bill Miller tea. At the bottom, you're going to find sand. This is not a real good representation because it comes from my compost pile, but and I some soil in there. At the bottom, you're going to find sand. Sand's the heaviest. It's going to fall to the bottom. Sand and gravel. Above that, you're going to find possibly a real thin layer of silt. This really dirty stuff up here, that's clay. Clay particles are very, very small. They're very spongy. And the challenge for us, I'll start over here. One time I was passing around one of these presentations in Bear County, and I hadn't learned my lesson yet, and it was a glass jar. Y'all know what happened. Yeah, that didn't work. But clay soil is like a sponge, and that's a challenge we have with clay soil. When the water hits, if you get a 1-inch rain in heavy clay soil, you did not get 1 inch of water in your soil. Because clay absorbs very slowly. It filtrates very slowly. This layer of clay is going to suck up every water it can get before it can get to this layer here. Now, sand water runs right through. But this heavy clay soil, these guys are going to hog all the water. When they're full, they'll let these guys have water. When they're full, they'll let these guys have water. So in a 1-inch rain, you may only get 1/4 inch of moisture in your soil. The rest of it is runoff. And the problem we're facing is people put a lot of chemicals on their yard, and that rain is washing it off into our rivers, down to the bay and down along the Gulf of Mexico. And that's a challenge. If we add organic material to our soil, it allows the water to be absorbed more freely. And in my yard, I took some pictures in the front yard where it's a lot of organic material. It's almost solid compost. When he had a 1-inch rain, it was moist 4 inches deep. In the backyard, where nobody sees it, and I don't have a lot of material, organic material, I had a 1/4 inch of moisture in that soil. So the backyard just ran right down the drive, right down to the next line. But my front yard absorbed absolutely every bit of it. I have a place in my yard where it's just the nature of it. It's just this little gully. And it's just a mess. As long as I tried to grow St. Augustine there, it just didn't work. The soil is so compacted. So what I did, I got the grass out of there, and I tried to dig it up. The first time the shovel went down about 1/4 inch, and I started breaking my knees. So I got it the best I could, and I put expanded shale in there. And I let it sit. And I came back later, and I got about 1 inch deep. I'm not joking. And I added compost to it. And I came back a few weeks later, and that is now about 8 inches deep. And now when it rains, the water soaks right down to the ground. And there's not a puddle there. We had one of our 10-inch rains back in March of last year. There wasn't a puddle to be found in that area. 10 years ago, it's only been a little late, but I could have done some bass fishing.
No.
But because the soil has been so amended, it's a really bad, thick clay soil, you can add expanded shale because it washes the soil, and you can add compost to it. So anyway, there's the soil horizon. Illustrated to that little thing right there. You have the organic material on top, and you have your surface horizon. Subsoil, substrata. The substrata is going to be the parent material. And it's kind of interesting because the first picture I showed you, hang on a second, for those of you who might get a headache going back through all this. Is that right? Is that right? This. See all those layers of soil. I took this at the San Antonio at the park. Breckenridge Park, right next to San Antonio River. So what San Antonio River gets, it's all that soil material from up north where it drains down over time, and then through starts in Cartward, and there you see real clearly the various levels of soil. I took that picture because of the tree roots, because I enjoy studying the tree roots. I thought that was a beautiful picture of the various soil horizons. All right, what was that? Where was that? Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. All right, so specific to our area, this is a fascinating picture for me, and I'm going to try to display it to you. There was an ice age a few years ago. Y'all weren't there, I think I was. The bottom line is when there was ice. The Texas shoreline, see how far the Gulf of Mexico is? That's the bottom line. Now, when the ice melted, you can see where it's going to be not the green line, but right below it. Is that little dotted line? When the ice melted, that became the shoreline of Texas. Now, I'm not going to the politics of global warming because that's a different conversation, but when people talk about they're concerned about the ice caps melting, we've been here before. And it happened about 35,000 years ago when we had ice up north, and that took the water out of the system. The Texas shoreline went out in the Gulf of Mexico. When that ice melted, it backed up, and it almost came just south of this area here. This is a map of the various regions of Texas. If you study soils, every map's going to label things a little differently. North of Bexar County is going to be what's called the Edwards Plateau. The area going through Bexar County is going to be called the Houston Black. Sometimes it's called I can't remember right now. And then south of us, where we're located, some people will call it, Blackland Prairie. That's what it is. The area we're located here is getting close to the post-oak clay pan area. And it's fascinating for me is this map here. This is why I love studying soil. All those colors you see about where we are, where the light green is, all those different colors showing the receding shorelines of Texas over the millions of years that have taken place. So one time the shoreline was up against just south of us. I have a fascinating picture to show you the power. The reason that this is so fascinating is because millions of years ago there was a mountain range through here called the Wichita Mountains, Washita Mountains, and you still have up in Arkansas, Oklahoma area. That in time dwindled down, and we have the Mount Cornus Escarpment. But this is a significant event. That's why I said this is a fascinating area. The mountain range that went from just north of us was so powerful that it affected the geology that you have here. So anyway, as you see the picture there, those different colors show you the different eras of soil development in South Texas, and this one gets very specific. And you can find this, if you just type in Geology of Texas, 1992, this is a map that comes out of the University of Texas. And then this chart over here will tell you exactly the year period. If you want to do your own research, you can research the Cretaceous period. You can look up the Fredericksburg, Washita groups. But each one of these represents a different formation in the state of Texas, which is what I find absolutely fascinating. That's why if you're up in Fredericksburg, Kerrville area, you can drive miles, everybody got the same soil. You drive a couple miles south here, the soil's different. You drive a couple miles to the east, the soil's different. A couple miles to the west, the soil's different. What I found fascinating is the soil I showed you, those three, the Somerset, Blackland, the Houston black, the Edwards and sand, the beach sand. Somerset is where I got my soil from, legally. And it's that red sandy clay, the red sandy clay soil. 10 miles as the crow flies to the east is the Sandyland olive orchard, and it's beach sand. 10 miles, and you go from red sandy clay soil to pure beach sand. To me, that's fascinating how that happened in the development of Texas. So if you, as master gardeners, are talking to people about growing what they're trying to grow, where you live. Well, I live in Sandyland. I live in sandy olive orchard. Good luck. That's beach sand. Well, I live out of Somerset. Well, good luck. You've got about 3 feet of red sandy soil, and then you've got clay soil. Dr. Stein, who's another one of the heroes for me in horticulture state of Texas, was talking about working with a pecan grower whose trees were suffering. He couldn't figure out why. Because he had sandy soil to drain. All 4 feet down was a clay base. And it just worked as a little bowl. So you think, well, I've got the soil to drain, good for my pecan trees, and that soil drains very slowly, hit that clay, and that clay said, we're not going anyplace. To lie filtrate one layer at a time. So that's why it's important for us to know what kind of soil we're dealing with. All right, this is something I found absolutely fascinating. This is a YouTube video. The theory is that 66 million years ago, an asteroid, comet, something like that, hit the Gulf of Mexico. They call it the dinosaur killer. It happened down toward the tip of Yucatan. This YouTube video theorizes what it looked like when that wave hit. It started traveling northwest. You see that white area there? All that was underwater. Where'd that water stop? About Plymouth, Escarpment, just north of us. That's how powerful that mountain range was. That thing flooded all of South Texas. Look at that. Houston's underwater going up to, that's almost Tyler, Texas, underwater. Louisiana, underwater. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, southern part of those states, Florida, underwater. That was the power of that asteroid, but it stopped just north of us at the Balcones Escarpment because those mountains were powerful enough to stop that. But the thing is, all that silt, all that sand, all that stuff washed up, and as it receded, it left the soil we have out here. So that right, try to reiterate again, we can't change our technique because it's taken millions of years to get here. So, what does all this mean? It means some plants just will not grow here. You know, you can do what you want to. You try to grow them in containers, but again, we're talking about earth-kind practices. Earth-kind practices is what does nature give us, either as conditions or restrictions, how you want to look at it. What is nature giving us? You can try to alter your container, you can have all the chemicals you want to, but earth-kind practices, what grows here? Now, see, the beauty of A&M is they are learning to develop plants that grow all over the place. They may be acidic-preferring plants, but they're genetically altering things so that they become more tolerant of alkaline soils. So some plants just will not grow here. We can try to make them, but by nature they don't want to be here. Our soil needs compost. Compost is things like leaves and grass clippings and fruits and vegetables. They're mixed together. Compost is an intentional product that we produce. The expression is compost happens. Well, if you're an obsessive person like me, compost doesn't happen. Decomposition happens. Compost is an intentional product. It's where you get what we call browns, which is dead leaves, cardboard, newspaper, not printing paper, but newspaper. And you combine, those are called browns, are high in carbon. And you combine that with things that are called high in nitrogen, which are like fruits and vegetables, coffee grounds. And you combine those things, you add a lot of water, and they will break each other down to a very nutritious thing called compost. What compost does is compost will feed the microbes in your soil. And compost also works with the molecules in your soil to make them restructure, which I think you can change the structure. Composting is really, it's a fascinating thing. I just started mine for this year, My neighbors, they very politely raked up all their leaves and they put them on the corner for me to pick up. And I go by and pick them up, and I convince my wife to carry them back to the compost pile for me. And my son-in-law works for HEB, and I said, you know, you have these food scraps because if you buy those oranges, they're already peeled, they have to do something with the orange peels. And you buy pineapple, they need to do something with the pineapple. So he brought me 7 crates of fruits and vegetables. And I thought, my pile's not that big. But somehow I worked them in there. It really smelled sweet for a while. Then the attract the rodents because they want meat and vegetables. They want meat and cheese and oil. It's just fruits and they want extra of that. And I had actually pineapple trees growing in my compost pile. I just pull them out. It's no big deal. But that stuff breaks down. It breaks down because there are microbes in there when you're chewing away at it. And what they do is I call it eat and excrete. Some people call it the poop loop, where they eat, they excrete their stuff, and it helps break down the pile, and you add that to your soil, and the microbes in your soil will eat that stuff, and they excrete. And when they excrete, the plants say, that's what I want to eat right there. What's fascinating is they're finding that plants, they found this with trees, and I think that's where I first learned about it, is trees will spend a lot of their energy attracting microbes, because they want those microbes there. The microbes take care of their business, and it feeds the tree. The tree says, thanks for being here, I'm going to feed you a little more. So the tree keeps the microbes here, as opposed to going down that really attractive mountain roll that just got planted. The live oak says, no, I want to keep you here. And so compost feeds those microbes, and those microbes provide the nutrients for our plants. So our soil needs compost because it changes the structure, which I mentioned earlier, we can change. Compost helps the soils, the clay or sandy or silt clay, be more efficient with water. So the water doesn't drain off, it doesn't soak right through. The compost doesn't just hold on to this a little bit. It holds on to the minerals. It also works with, let me see here. Yeah. It works with the nutrients we have in the soil. Part of the challenge that we have with our soils is high pH soils do not work well with some nutrients. It doesn't work well with iron. For our high clay soils, you need a special iron supplement. And it's 5 initials. I don't know what they mean. The words are way too long for me. My horticulture. It's EDDHA. And what I noticed, I went to the nursery. I'll repeat those in a minute so somebody can get them. I went to the nursery at my house and I saw all these iron supplements. They're just iron supplements. Iron supplements do not work well. They will work, but don't work well with our high pH soil. It just doesn't work that way. And so EDDHA, something like that, is a chelated iron, and it works with our high alkaline. Notice, I think 2 or 3 have initials. This is EDDHA, for whatever reason, this chelated iron works with our soil so the plants actually get to absorb it. Consider the price of those products, you're paying a lot of money for iron that may or may not get to your plants. But that is a result of the soils that we have here. We cannot change that. Phosphorus is a mineral or a nutrient that our soils do not take up. Dr. Stein said that if you put some phosphorus on your soil, you come back 5 years later, it's still going to be there. Because the soil locks it up and the plant doesn't get it. But if we add compost to our soil, compost makes the soil change the way it deals with nutrients. So your waters absorb better, your minerals absorb better, and compost affects the way that our soils work with the nutrients. And compost will slightly modify a soil's pH temporarily. The difference between 5 dump trucks of sand and compost, the sand's not going to do anything. Compost will. Compost will feed the microbes of the soil, and it will work with the soil to be more efficient. But that compost needs to be replenished every year. It's an organic material. It's hot outside. That hot material, that hot summer, the hot sun is going to eat up, is going to help break up that organic material. And so compost is constantly applied. People ask me how much. In my front yard, I started off twice a year, but then I'm down and out about once a year because it's about 4 to 6 inches of very loose soil. You put your hand in there to pull out just crumbly stuff. In my front yard, in a different presentation, I show you, I did not water my front yard from August 2018 to July 2019. I didn't have any water to this green 12 months. We had that, remember that a couple of years ago we got down like sub-zero, 15 feet of snow. In 1 month my grass is green. Because the soil is so loose, there's so much compost there, the roots are deep down in that soil. If you only got an inch of decent soil, and it's 109 degrees out there for the 54th straight day, there's no moisture in that soil, and your plants are struggling. But if you've got soil 6, 8 inches deep, those roots are fine. I think it was San Antonio Water System did, I'm too many stories, but that's okay. San Antonio Water System did a study with Texas A&M and South Bend County with turf grasses. They had 2 sections. The soil was whatever depth the soil was. The other side, the soil was 4 inches deep. And they did a 60-day drought on it. If it looked like it was going to rain, they covered it. And so when the sun was out, they took it off. For 60 days, that turf grass did not get any rain whatsoever, any moisture whatsoever. At the end of 60 days, all the turf grass at 4 inches died. The turf grass in the deeper soil, some of you got beat up, but they came back because the roots get to go deeper where it's cooler and there's moisture down there. And that's because of compost. So what can you do? Well, you can learn more about your soil. Get a soil test. What exactly do you have? Because the soil changes so much because the mountains, the way the water affected us, as the shorelines form, our soil is a little different. Everybody's soil may be a little different. Get a pH test. What exactly are you looking at? Because if you got high pH, you're going to need a special kind of iron. If you got lower pH, you can get the stuff from the nurseries. It's a little cheaper. Relatively cheaper. What's the texture of your soil? How much sand? How much silt? How much clay is it? What's the nutrient deficiency? My son-in-law sent me a thing from, he saw online about copper. Copper does such a great thing for these guys' yard. Well, it works if your yard needs it. If your yard doesn't need copper, add more copper is not going to make any difference. If you got a full glass of water, add more water to it's not going to make it any better. So anyway, he didn't buy it. And like I said, what can you do? You can add compost. Compost comes in 2 formulations. One is restaurant, basically it's food-based, and the other one is manure-based. Manure-based they get from the various lots around here. Manure-based also comes in human manure. It sounds kind of yucky and gross, but they have to do something with it. And they treat it, it's very high in nitrogen, and that's why I use my front yard. Because it's absolutely magnificent stuff. How do you do a soil test? Well, the idea is if you get down 6 inches deep, some of y'all may not be able to, but if you've got a 20 by 20 foot area, every few feet, go down 6 inches and get yourself a nice little trowel full, put it in a 5-gallon bucket and mix it up. If you do just this area, you want to get a sampling of the entire yard. Now, if you have acreage, that's a little different. If you have a yard, you can get the sampling from the yard, mix it up. You get a soil test package from your county agent, send it off to A&M, fill out the form, tell them what you want to know, and they'll come back with that information. All right, so compost. I've already been through this a little bit. It's an intentional process in which we try to imitate nature by forcing it through browns, greens, and water. Feeds the microbes. It changes the structure of the soil. It helps to neutralize some of the alkalinity. And here's what I was telling you about earlier. And I'll go back and forth and show you. If you've got an 8 pH of 8, there's how much, that's in the phosphorus is affected. The nitrogen is affected. The iron's affected. Over here in the East Texas, they have a separate area. So you folks over here get my steps of today. Just look at the chart. If you've got an area of 8 to 9, your nitrogen ability is decreased. Look at your phosphorus ability is decreased. Your magnesium is decreasing. Look at the irons and manganese. So that's why it's important to know your pH, so you have some idea of what your nutrient availability is. So, here's what we cover. The components of soil are air, the roots got to breathe, water, they need to drink, and that's how we get minerals pass through. Organic material is needed. The parent material, for the most part, is limestone, it's going to be clay. Something like granite is going to be more sandy. We talked about sandy, that should say clay instead of lay, that's my typo, sorry, I was thinking about potato chips. And the soil pH, is it going to be acidic or is it going to be alkaline, which affects the availability of nutrients. That's why all of this little stuff is important. And just a reminder, as I start my very first slide, it is not practical to change a soil's texture. If you've got clay soil, learn to live with it. It's not practical to change the soil pH because we are just an aqueous area, and that's just the way there is. So here we go. So, I talked a lot, talk too fast sometimes, and most of y'all stayed away, so that's a good thing. What questions do you have about anything soil related, compost related, even mulch related that I can possibly answer? Or you just so confused like a little kid here? Yes?
Expanded shale,
Yes?
about the size of your thumbnail. The
Yes.
pieces. It breaks down, really?
I don't know how, I don't know if it breaks, I don't really know. I know that there's a research paper done by a PhD out of Texas A&M. He said for heavy clay soil, if you add shale to it, it is expensive. It'll keep it broken up because that heavy clay soil is going to want to clump back together. And he said in his experiments, adding expanded shale and compost was the best thing to break up the little heavy clay soil. Yes.
How much expanded shale?
I use it sparingly because it's pretty pricey.
Very expensive.
Yeah, there's a little bag like that, and it weighed a ton. My wife had a hard time carrying it in the car. But I just put I didn't need a whole lot. I just needed enough to, it was about a 10 by 10 foot area, and I just got 140-pound bag, and I just kind of spread it out.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
compost, I was very generous with it. It was the manure compost that you all very generously, those in the sense that you very generously applied to my yard. Don't offer me any more without being treated first though. So, any other questions? Yes?
How do you incorporate worms
Into the yard?
in it? Yeah, compost.
I don't incorporate, you can't incorporate worms in a compost because a compost pile, my compost pile right now is 140 degrees. When you put tomatoes with leaves or coffee grounds, Starbucks is a great place to get coffee grounds. You put those two together, that temperature's going up. At 140 degrees, those worms are not going to survive. What I have found though, is at the end of a compost period, which can be months, there's a period where it just sits. It's called curing. It's basically room temperature. When I go to dig that stuff out, I've got worms all over the place. The worms are great because they make it even richer in nutrients. So at the end of the process, yes. At the beginning of the process, it'll just cook them. But there is worm composting that's separate. All right, what other question you got? I'll make up something.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm in the beach stand, so how much compost, I mean, I have a hard time growing the trees, like you said, it just goes through. Even putting some compost in there when I plant them, but it still is not really helping.
I would find the most sand-tolerant trees I could find. I'd research them. Texas A&M has a tree finder guide. You just type in your browser, Texas A&M tree finder. They have more trees than you want to look at. But I would find the most sand-tolerant. And then when you plant a tree, a lot of people want to add compost to the area in rich soil. What research found is that really hurts the trees. Because the trees find out how great that soil is, and then they get to the real world and they start dying. So what they'll say is, let the trees grow in the native soil. If you want to add compost, add it 6 feet out, because that's feeding the soil. That will change the structure of the soil, and the roots have a more easy time to grow out there. So I'd find the most sand-tolerant trees I could, and I'd incorporate compost into a larger area. But then you have to look at the size of the trees. Some of these trees, like these Mexican sycamores, they cover 875 square feet of maturity. That means you got to figure out how to change that structure. You're going to be always changing it. So I'll start with the most sand-tolerant trees I can find.
So do you think if I want to grow, say, a fruit tree or something like that, maybe either do a container or build a raised bed?
It depends on the fruit tree. Some fruit trees work with containers, some of them don't. I was growing Arctic frost, orange frost, those are orange trees. And I grew in containers, and they produce a lot of oranges for until this heat killed them. But they grow usually in the Myers limit, grows in the containers. Some of these other trees don't. And I was hearing a conversation earlier, when you grow fruit trees, you want to keep them about this tall. Because they don't really want you climbing a ladder to get that orange 25 feet up in the air. If you keep about, they almost grow, Dr. Stein suggests grow with bushes, because you can get the tree. So some of them will grow in containers. And that's where you just kind of do some research. What kind of trees will grow in containers? Some trees will not grow here. And I was talking with Bill earlier, they're changing our designation from 9A to 9B. It's getting warmer down here. And some of these trees need chill hours. So it's hard to get chill hours if it doesn't get cold. And going down to 9 degrees for 2 days is not chill hours, that's just cold. You need chill hours for a number of times, so you look up, be careful the type of tree, the fruit tree that you're trying to grow here. All right,
Is 9B gonna be official? Is that gonna,
is that official now, Bill?
Yes.
Yes, it's
It is
official.
official, 9B.
so we go into succulents and cactuses and?
Yes.
Okay.
Or you get some well-adapted plants.
Yeah.
Anything else? So Bill's giving away door prizes, I think he has a car.
No.
Brand new from Cabot Cadillac. Wherever comes the boat.
Any more questions?
I don't know, but let's give him a hand.
Yes.